Good morning, everyone. It's 10 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. On the event page that you all use to get here, there's a link called Course Materials that has the material from last week that was requested. So you can click on that and you'll get to that material. So I just want to welcome back Venerable Jamyang to the center. This is unfortunately our last teaching for now, but hopefully we'll be able to have Venerable back in the future. So again, thank you so much for teaching, and over to you.
Pleasure. Thank you very much for having me. And good morning to all of you. I hope it is a beautiful Sunday morning in New Mexico. So we're going to do our second day speaking about the 12 links of dependent arising, and we do that in order to understand karma and in order to understand cause and effect. Last time we spoke about the relationship between the 12 links, and today I would like to speak about what can we do with our practice in order to influence each one of these links. Maybe we cannot influence every one of them, but what do we have in our toolbox of Buddhist practices so that we can make the influence of certain aspects of our behavior, of the workings of our mind, so that we can influence them, so that we're getting a little bit less caught up in the 12 links of dependent arising or in samsara. What can we do? And I think there's a lot that we can do. Before I go there, I want to say, I want to come back a little bit to what I spoke about last time. I showed you the picture of the 12 links of the Wheel of Life. And I went with my cursor on it, and I thought you see my cursor, but I don't think you do. Do you? You see my cursor? Okay, yeah, good. Later, I thought you didn't see that, and I'm talking about this link and that link, and you have maybe know anything about. But I'm going to show you because the first time that you hear these teachings, it can appear to be so complicated. And then when you see it, it might not be that complicated. Just to give you some more clarity in it. And so again, if you have questions, please feel free to ask them, put them in the chat. After about 1 hour, I will stop and you will have the opportunity to ask more questions. But if there are things not clear during the teachings, please put it in the chat, because I will sometimes look at it and will take time to answer them. Okay, so then before we start, we always try to adjust our motivation to make sure that whatever we are doing doesn't become a cause for samsara, but it becomes a cause for liberation or maybe even enlightenment. So just take a moment to close your eyes and check your motivation. And then we can generate a motivation in the lines of whatever I learned today, may that somehow contribute of my full potential of wisdom and compassion. Or may whatever I learn, may that help me to become the best version of myself. May it help me to transform all my negative qualities that are of benefit to sentient beings, so that I can be of greatest benefit to all. And with that motivation, we can take refuge. I've got refuge prayer for you. Let me see if I can do the share. Yes, very good. So we can do again twice in Tibetan and then one time in English. Sangye chenan songye chonam la jangchun badu dani kyap suchi nage chunyengi pe sonam ge drola penchia sangye drupa shu Sangye chenan songye chonam la jangchun badu dani kyap suchi Nage chenyengi pe sonamgi drola penchi sange drupa shu. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. So I don't know if you just got the forms that I sent to Lhundup. They just received it or they had it already last week?
It's on the event page. We don't do registration, so we don't know who's coming or.
Okay.
But it's on the event page for today. It's called a materials link or course materials. So you just click on that, and then you'll go to the folder where the files are.
Right. So I'm going to put up one of them, but I did some coloring in. Just let me see how I do that. I'm not so handy in this, so I first have to go to this and share it. Yeah, then I have to show it you like this. So these are the 12 links of dependent arising, similar than the wheel of life that we looked at last week. So starting on the top with ignorance and then going to formations, consciousness, name and form, sense spheres, contact, feeling, craving, clinging, becoming or existence, birth and aging and death. And so the Buddha speaks about that these 12 links, these are cause and effect of each other. So when there is ignorance, that causes formations or actions of body, speech, and mind. That causes an imprint or a seed to be deposited in the consciousness. That seed has the potential for a body, name and form, a body and a mind, name and form with certain sense spheres, and under the influence of contact, feelings are produced. And when feelings arise in the mind, then from that craving and clinging or grasping comes, and that craving and grasping is the cause for existence. And so from that, birth and aging and death come. So they are all cause and effect from each other, right? But they do not appear chronologically as cause and effect. So the feeling, for instance, from the seed that is implanted, not to say that, the feeling from the seed that is deposited on my mind is not the same as the feeling that is the cause of craving. These are two different moments of consciousness, and these can be completely unrelated to each other. So in general, dependence on contact, feeling arises, right? This always happens. Contact is the cause for feeling. Feeling is always the result of contact. But if we talk about the 12 links, then it is not necessarily that the feeling that is the potential of the consciousness, of the seed that was deposited in the consciousness, is not the same as the feeling that is the cause of craving at the end of death, at the end of this life, at the time of death. Do you understand that? Or is that gonna break your brains? So how do we think about it? So then last week we spoke about that you can divide the 12 links into 4 groups of different factors. And the first group is this one that I made purple, which is ignorance, formations, and consciousness. And these are called the projecting factors. So this is what makes that seeds are projected into the consciousness. They are projecting a future rebirth. They have the potential to cause a future rebirth. So under the influence of ignorance, I perform actions with my body, speech, and mind, and that leaves seeds in my consciousness. These are called factors. Then these seeds have the potential for a body and mind, a certain type of body and mind that have certain sense spheres. They have contact and they have feelings. And so these 4 are called projected factors. This is what is projected by ignorance, formations, and consciousness. And so that is the second group. Then these seeds, if there is nothing happening, then the seed cannot do anything. You know, same as that we have a seed in the garden. If there is not enough water, sunlight, fertilizer, the seed will not sprout. Not possible. So there is something needed for the seed to be actualized. And these are called actualizing factors. And so the actualizing factors is craving, grasping, or clinging, and becoming. And what do they actualize? They actualize a life, birth, aging, and death. So these are the actualized factors. And so the projecting factors are the cause of the projected factors. Ignorance, action, and the seed deposited in the consciousness are the cause for a later arising of name and form, 6 sense spheres, contact, and feeling. And then the craving and clinging and becoming are the cause for birth, aging, and death. Right? So there are 2 groups of cause and effect within the 12 links. So each link is the cause of the next link, and at the same time we can divide them in a way that there are 2 groups of cause and effect. All right, and then we can say the cause, which is the projecting fact, the ignorance, the actions that we do under the influence of that ignorance, actions of body, speech, and mind, and the seed deposited in the consciousness. That is seen as the substantial cause of a future rebirth. Without that, a future rebirth cannot happen in accordance with that seed. Right? Have you heard of substantial cause? Substantial cause is the cause that is needed in order for something to arise. For instance, the substantial cause for rice is a rice seed. The substantial cause for a sunflower is a sunflower seed. Without that seed, the sunflower cannot arise. But the seed alone is not enough. I also need conditions for the sunflower to be able to sprout. So these conditions are within the 12 links, the craving and grasping. So we have a substantial cause, which is the purple area, ignorance, and then the actions done under the influence of ignorance. And then we have the conditions, which again is an action, a thought at the end of our life. And we have the afflictive emotions, which are craving and clinging. So we need them both for a seed to be able to sprout, for a seed to be able to come to fruition into a new life. Right? One of them is not enough. So when we have clinging and grasping, but there are no seeds, then nothing will happen. We won't be able to take rebirth. So when I say that, it sounds a little bit weird because we have so many seeds in the mind. You know, we can never, ever, ever eliminate all of them. But what we can eliminate is we can eliminate the craving and the grasping. When we eliminate that, even if there are many, many seeds in the mind, they will not be able to ripen at the end of life. Right? These are seeds of contaminated karma, which will lead to to suffering, which will lead to rebirth within samsara. If there is no clinging and grasping, these seeds cannot be activated. Okay, so that is what I wanted to say, what we did last week, just to make that more clear. Is that clear for everyone? Okay. If there are any questions, please let me know. So then we go to these 12 links and we go through them and see what can we do with our practice in order to make the influence of that link less strong or less effective in producing causes for samsara. And so the first link is ignorance. The ignorance that we speak about in the first link is the ignorance which is the root of samsara. The ignorance which is grasping at a self being an independent entity, standing in and of itself. A self which is real, as if it is an objective entity that is somewhere living inside us. Right? We have this feeling as if there is a substance inside us that we can call the self. Right? That idea, that conception, that is the root of all our suffering, because in dependence on that self, we have to make sure that we get what we need. And we have to make sure that if we get something that we don't like or don't want, or then that we react, that we protect ourselves. And so in dependence on that grasping at the self, holding that self to be an independent entity, attachment and aversion arises in the mind. And in dependence on that, all the other delusions arise in the mind. And in dependence on these delusions, we engage in actions of body, speech, and mind. So if we can reduce the grasping at the self as being an independent entity, the karma that we create will cause less suffering. Is that true? Can you follow now? If I grasp less strong, hold less strong onto that self, then the actions that I do will be less influenced by that grasping itself. And therefore, when the karma ripens, that is deposited in my mind, independence on that grasping itself, will be of a nature of causing less suffering. True. When we do virtuous actions, we still have grasping at the self, of course, you know, but when we do virtuous actions for the benefit of others, the self-grasping is much less. Have you ever noticed that? But when we are angry or when we really want something, then the grasping becomes very strong. Right? So how do we create less self-grasping? And I just said already, when we create virtuous actions, when we do actions for the benefit of others, But the real antidote that we want to develop is that we develop a wisdom mind that is totally opposite to the mind that grasps at a self. And so the mind that grasps at a self is the mind that grasps at an inherently existent self, an independent self. So generating the opposite mind is the mind that realizes that such an inherently existent self or such an independent self does not exist. We need to see, oh, that's not true, right? We believe it is true. So we first need to see it's not true. It's not there. It doesn't exist. Right? And in order to develop the wisdom mind that can see that, we need to study and meditate on emptiness. Right? Only emptiness can really cut the root of samsara. When we realize emptiness directly, we can, for instance, not produce any throwing karma anymore. We cannot produce the karma anymore that gives rise to a rebirth within samsara, a rebirth under the influence of karma and delusions. What we can do when we realize emptiness, we can do prayers to be reborn in samsara again in order to benefit sentient beings. But that is a very different type of rebirth. That is a rebirth under the influence of, we can choose the rebirth. We can choose where we are born once we realize emptiness. As long as we haven't realized emptiness, we will be reborn in samsara under the influence of karma and delusions. All right. So it will take some time before we realize emptiness, right? Unless you have very good imprints, then maybe, when you activate these imprints, you might realize it very quickly. But in general, we say it takes a long, long time. His Holiness says, sometimes I have a taste of it. So when he has just a taste of it, you can imagine what it will take for us to develop that state of mind. But I think it's always hopeful to know that that is a possibility. We are not forever in samsara. We can create a cause to get out of samsara. And every time when we understand a little bit more about how we do not exist independently, the better we understand it, the less it will influence, the less that self-grasping mind will influence our karma. And with that, also our rebirth. And you may say, oh, but emptiness is so difficult. I don't understand. No, it's not for me, So another thing that you can do is that you don't focus on the emptiness itself, although it is very good to do, even if you don't really understand it. But you don't on the emptiness itself. You focus on the fact that you do not exist, or the self does not exist as an independent entity. But it exists as an entity that arises in dependence, or that arises dependent upon causes and conditions. It arises in dependence on the mind that grasps at the self. Right? So you can contemplate that everything that you see, everything that exists, everything, you, yourself, your body, the self that you hold on to, that all arises in dependence on causes and conditions. So whatever happens in the moment that you believe that something is really like that, then remember, no, it is like that independence of. Right? Sometimes we have this feeling, it is really like that. If this person hadn't done that, then this wouldn't have happened, But all that arises in dependence on so many causes and conditions. And all that and the self arises in dependence upon the mind labeling it, the mind imputing it, the mind believing in it. Right? So you can contemplate that aspect of reality. Whether you contemplate emptiness or whether you contemplate dependent arising, they're just two sides of the same coin. Both will weaken your grasping at the self. In order to be really liberated from samsara, we have to realize emptiness. We need to realize that side, that what we believe in, we need to see that that doesn't exist. But in the meantime, you know, with the contemplating dependent arising, we can weaken the grasping at the self. All right, this is the one that is going to free us from samsara. So we need to really remember that. So then if we look into the second link, formations, which is the actions of body, speech, and mind that we do under the influence of the self-grasping mind. So what can we do about that? You know, we can learn about the conventional nature of reality. We can learn about how does reality function. We can learn about cause and effect. We can learn about the law of karma. And so the less we understand karma, the more we will engage in actions which are creating a lot of suffering for ourselves. When we don't know karma, we do not know how to differentiate between virtuous actions and non-virtuous actions, right? We just do what we like. We just do what we think is going to make us happy. And so by learning about karma, we can learn how to create at least the causes for happiness. When we learn about karma, we can at least stop producing the causes for suffering. You know, we can stop producing the causes for rebirth in the lower realms. Right? So how do we do that? If we go into the lamrim, we learn about what is going to cause suffering in terms of taking a rebirth that is in the nature of suffering. So we're going to learn about the 10 non-virtuous actions that cause rebirth in the lower realms. And we start eliminating them. We start abandoning them or abstaining from these actions. If we stop the 10 non-virtuous actions in our own behavior, we are already creating merit. We are already generating a virtuous mind. We are already changing our mind. That's the first step. Then we learn about the 10 virtuous actions. And after we can abstain from the negative aspect or the negative actions, we can start engaging in positive actions. Right? Then we learn about the importance of motivation, because the main ingredient of our actions is the motivation. And we can think about what is motivating me. Why am I doing that? Why do I, whatever action, you know, why am I not careful when I walk outside and it is raining and all these insects are coming out and I'm careless. I just walk, you know, I don't even look where I'm stepping. Maybe I'm killing out of ignorance. Maybe I'm killing about being careless. Maybe I'm killing because I'm more worried about myself. Maybe. So I observe my mind. And then I check, can I do this differently? You know, can I be more careful? Can I be more aware of other sentient beings that are on my path and have a caring attitude towards them? Right? That is already a virtuous mind. We can observe our attachment. We can observe our aversion. We can observe our lack of awareness. Right? And then try to improve, try to do things with, I think the more mindfulness we bring to our actions, the less we are ruled by the delusions. The delusions normally come when we are not so aware, you know, they come automatic. They come when we don't think. They come when we feel we do things naturally. You know, it's not really natural, but we are so habituated to it that we just do it. When we bring mindfulness to our actions, then we can investigate. What am I doing? Can I do this differently? You know, what does it mean for others when I behave like this? Then we can learn about karma. You know, there's so many things that we can learn about karma. And the more we learn, the more we can apply that, observing our own actions of body, speech, and mind. Not with a judgmental mind that says, oh, that's wrong, you know, oh, you're such a bad person that you do that. No, it's observing karma means that how can I create the best conditions for myself so that I can keep developing my potential for wisdom and compassion. The result of karma is always coming back to us in the form of experiences. And so when I create a lot of negative karma for myself, it's going to create a lot of, it creates an environment for me in which it's going to be very difficult to develop my potential. So it's not so beneficial. If I'm really serious about becoming enlightened, I need to create the conditions that I can practice, which means I need to create the conditions that I feel happy, that I do not have any obstacles to my practice, that I have enough money, that I have enough support. So how do I do that? I do that by creating virtuous actions. I do that by abstaining from non-virtuous actions. Right? Can you see the difference? We often judge, right? Oh, that's wrong. I'm a bad person. But in Buddhism, I feel like we don't have this judgment. It's just that when we engage in negative actions, we create an environment for ourselves in which it is very difficult to practice. And so that's not beneficial. All right. We can think about, for instance, the factors that are needed to have a complete action. We can think about what makes actions very heavy, what makes actions very virtuous. You know, we study karma. We can think about the sufferings of samsara. The more we understand the sufferings of samsara, the more we say, oh, yeah, I have that too. Oh, yes, I suffer from that too. I want to avoid creating actions for that. Right? Thinking about suffering is a help to motivate us to practice more virtue. Only when we realize how we are suffering in samsara, only independence on that can we generate the wish to be free of that. And that wish is needed for us to change our mind, to direct our mind towards virtue. True. So there is a lot that we can do in terms of actions, in terms of understanding the conventional nature of reality. And so then we influence our actions, and with that, we influence the seeds that are deposited in our mind as a result of our actions. Okay, so that's what we can do with the second link. And then if we go to the third link, where the seeds are deposited, you know, you might say, oh, what can I do about it? But in Buddhism, we have the practice of the four opponent powers. True, you know that, right? The Vajrasattva practice, the purification practice. And the four opponent powers, when we practice this, the result of that is that the potential of the seed gets diminished. So when we have seeds in our mind that are going to cause, I don't know, maybe that we die very early in life, we can purify these seeds. And the more we purify these seeds, the less powerful these seeds become, the less capacity they have to cause that particular suffering in our life. So doing Prajasattva practice every day is a very good method to make sure that the seeds do not keep not increasing, but in actuality start decreasing their potential for creating suffering in the future. Right, and you know the 4 opponent powers. Regret is very important, that you see that by having created these actions, I actually create a lot of suffering for myself, which means I have obstacles on my path towards enlightenment. So I regret these actions. Then we have done these actions in relationship to a sentient being. Maybe you think, oh, you know, I killed a sentient being, now I have to purify that karma. Well, if we kill today a sentient being, we can be sure that we have killed many sentient beings in many previous lifetimes. So instead of just purifying that one negative karma that we have done today, we can think, well, I must have done this many, many times. So I call that to mind, all of that. Maybe I have created this karma in relation to all sentient beings. So I visualize all sentient beings in front of me and I generate a wish that instead of harming them, I want to benefit them. And then we take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, and we apply the remedy. We do the Vajrasattva practice that purifies the karma. And then we make a very strong determination. I'm never, ever going to do this again. Or I'm not going to do this again today or this week, however long you feel that you can abstain from that action. Right? So when we purify, then we are working with the seeds that already have been deposited in the mind, so that they don't increase in potency, but even decrease in potency. So we cannot completely destroy the seeds, right? That is only when we realize emptiness directly, we can destroy this. The seeds cannot produce the karma anymore. But we can influence the potency that they have. So then when we go to the link of name and form, there's not much we can do, right? We can do something with purifying the seeds, but we can after that we cannot do much. Also the 6 sense basis, I don't think we can do much about that. Then there is contact. You know, contact we can use if there is something that is triggering you very strongly. In terms of, I don't know, long time ago, I smoked, you know. Then when I stopped smoking, every time when I saw the blue of the package of cigarettes, I had this strong craving. So I prevented having contact with that package. Every time when I saw it, I turned my head like, I don't want to see the blue because it's creating so much craving in my mind. I just have not to see it. And so by avoiding contact with that for 1 year, it took me 1 year. After that, I could look at the package and the craving would not arise anymore. You know, so sometimes seeing something creates so much craving that we cannot stop ourselves from engaging in the contact. Then we can prevent ourselves from having that contact. Right? And then work with our mind while we do not have contact. And then maybe later we can have contact again when the attachment or the aversion has decreased and we can be with the object without following that attachment and aversion, then we can go back to the contact. All right. And then we get to feeling. So feeling is, I think, a very big one for us. Just let me have a look if there is a question. Larry asks, is the consciousness always present or does it arise only when there is a karmic seed present? You mean the consciousness of the third link? You know, the third link is a moment of consciousness. It is the moment of consciousness. I don't know if it happens exactly at the point, at the time of the action or just after the action, but the consciousness that is the third link is the consciousness in which the seed is deposited as a result of action. I would say action refers to intention, right? Action, karma refers to intention. Intention is an omnipresent mental factor. So in every moment of consciousness, there is intention. So I think in every moment of consciousness, there is also the depositing of a seed. So consciousness is always present, but a particular seed is deposited at a certain moment in time. That is one moment of consciousness. All right. So then feeling. Independence on contact, when we make contact with an object, or whether that is a person or a thing, or a person or a thing, we experience pleasant feelings or unpleasant feelings or neutral feelings. Only these three possibilities we have. And in dependence on that feeling that arises, we discriminate the object as being attractive or unattractive or neutral. And so our life exists out of experiences. In every moment of consciousness, feeling arises. So feeling is also an omnipresent mental factor. It is there in every moment of mind, in every moment of our life. So in every moment of our life, we experience the result of previous actions. Feelings are the result of previous actions. Once the feeling has arisen, the karma is finished. Once we have fully experienced the feelings that belong to a certain karma, then the karma is finished. True? Whatever we have experienced can never come back. True? It's important to know. Whatever we have experienced is gone, cannot come back. You know, maybe something similar can come back, but that one is gone. So how do we relate to feelings? What we do is when pleasant feelings arise in the mind, attachment follows automatically. I want more, right? I want to hold on to that pleasant feeling. Oh, wow, this is nice. When unpleasant feelings arise in the mind, we say, oh no, I don't like to feel that. I want to be separated from that. So when we try to hold on to the feeling, what we do is we do not allow the feeling to leave our mind. You know, feelings, they arise and they dissolve back into the mind. If we would do nothing, they arise and they dissolve back. They arise and they dissolve back, just like waves in the ocean. But what we do is when pleasant feelings arise, we try the feeling not to leave. You know, we try to hold on to the feeling. We try to somehow create more of that. That is attachment. When there is attachment, the feeling cannot dissolve back into the mind. When unpleasant feelings arise, what we do is we try to push the feeling away. Oh no, I don't want to feel this. We push it away. We do not allow the feeling to arise. And also that feeling then cannot dissolve back into the mind. Right? And with that, with attachment and aversion, we create a lot of suffering for ourselves. We find it very difficult when feelings arise to step back and just experience the feeling. True? Do you recognize that? It's difficult, isn't it? So we react to feelings. We do that automatically. And every time that we are not mindful, we will react like that. We will react to pleasant feelings with attachment and to unpleasant feelings with aversion. And if we look into our daily life, you know, I don't know what scientist says, but I think it is 95% of the time, we are not mindful of the present moment. We are reacting automatically. And so when we react automatically, we react with aversion and attachment. We constantly try to feel good, which means we run after the pleasant feelings and we try to avoid the unpleasant feelings. True? Have you ever observed that, how we constantly are checking in our body and our mind that we are feeling good? And if there's something that bothers us, that we move the body, or we get up and we get something, or we move in order to change that, in order to feel good again. Constantly. So when we react with attachment and aversion are both delusions. They are the second link. They are the cause for suffering. Right? So what can we do with this? If we look into how we crave, you know, what are we craving for? What are we craving to be free for? Then we get to the 8 worldly dharmas. Have you heard of that? 8 worldly dharmas, which is that we crave for having material things, for having comfort. We crave for the pleasures of the 6 senses. We crave for sweet, ego-pleasing words and sounds. And we crave for personal praise and admiration. And we crave to be free from the opposite. Right? We want to be free of not having material things. We crave to be free of discomfort. We crave to be free of displeasure of the 6 senses. We do not want to hear ugly and displeasing sounds, and we do not want to, we try to avoid personal slander and blame and criticism. This is what we are constantly doing. These are the 8 worldly dharmas. This is what, when feelings come, we all have pleasant feelings with material comfort. So when we feel a little bit of discomfort, we immediately try to find comfort. Be free of that discomfort. True? These 8 worldly dharmas, they come to the mind automatically. They are about, I want to be happy right now. I do not want to suffer right now. And they're very self-centered. They're all about me. So when we are not aware, when we are not mindfully present, this is how we behave. True? Sometimes when I think about it, it's a little bit shocking. Yeah? Sometimes I wish that we would be a little bit more virtuous if we are not aware, but we are not. We are just wanting to have immediate gratification. We want to be happy now. We behave like 2-year-olds, you know, if we are not mindful. I want to be happy now. We are emotional beings when we are not mindfully present. So what can we do about this? First of all, we need to think about that feelings are the result of actions. They are the last little thing to be experienced, then the karma is finished. We see feelings as the beginning of something. I follow my feelings. You know, but if feelings are the result of actions, then if we would just be aware of our actions and we create virtuous actions, then we can be sure that pleasant feelings will come naturally without any effort. We don't have to run after pleasant feelings to have pleasant feelings. We just need to create the causes for pleasant feelings to have them. So instead of being focused on the feelings, we change the focus to our actions. That's one thing. Another thing that we can do is when feelings arise, when pleasant feelings arise, instead of immediately grasping and wanting more, we say, okay, I experience this fully. I feel it. I enjoy it. This is the result of my good karma. I should fully feel it and fully experience it. Then when it's finished, I let it go. I'm grateful. I'm happy. I'm content, and I let it go. When unpleasant feelings arise, then we sit with it. Instead of distracting ourselves, running away from it, trying to cover it up with something pleasant, we're going to feel the unpleasant feeling. We allow the feeling to arise. And I think we have trouble doing that. Many of us. We don't know how to do that. As soon as unpleasantness comes, we are out. I don't want to feel it. When we do not allow unpleasant feelings to arise, they keep somehow sitting in our mind, you know. When the unpleasant feelings are not experienced, then also it becomes more difficult for the pleasant feelings to really bring us pleasure. And we start feeling more numb, you know, and feeling less intense. No matter what. So if you look into the world, we need more and more stimuli in order to feel, right? That is because we are numbing ourselves out. And we are numbing ourselves out by disconnecting from unpleasant feelings. So sitting with unpleasant feelings, I think for me, that's the biggest learning in life, you know, and it brings me the most result in terms of enjoying my daily life. The better I can do it, the more I feel alive, the more I can experience also the pleasurable experiences. And so what we suffer most from when unpleasant feelings arise is that we disconnect. So we can fix that by being mindful. Oh, I feel unpleasant feelings. This doesn't feel nice, you know. Then the second thing that we do when we experience unpleasant feelings is that we start beating ourselves up. How stupid are you? How could you should have done better? We take a stick and we beat ourselves, right? We think that is how we get rid of unpleasant feelings, but actually we create so much more unpleasant feelings by doing that. So if we experience something unpleasant, what if we start talking kindly to ourselves and say, oh my gosh, this really hurts, you know? And we start talking to ourselves like we speak to our best friend. Or we start talking to ourselves in the way that we would like our best friend to speak to us. And so we give ourselves some support, some nourishment, some compassion. And then we remind ourselves, you know, because when we suffer, we have this feeling that we are quite alone. We feel separated somehow from others, from humanity. And we think we are the only ones who are suffering. So we can remind ourselves, this is just a human experience. I'm not the only human being experiencing this. There are so many human beings experience something similar, which helps us to connect to others, which helps to alleviate the suffering of that unpleasant feeling that is arising. So we can relate in a different way to our feelings, to the pleasant feelings and to the unpleasant feelings. Right? When we have the courage to completely experience the feeling, positive or negative, the craving to have more or the craving to have less, less of the unpleasantness will become less. Right? So the craving and the grasping becomes less. True? When we know how to experience suffering, when suffering comes, we can imagine that when the time of death comes, which we for sure, for most of us, it's going to be a suffering experience. If we know how to relate to suffering, when we're not afraid of suffering, when we know that we can bear suffering, the mind will be so much more peaceful at the end of death, at the end of life. Right? And we want to die a peaceful death. So that's the virtue that comes from experiencing whatever is there. So what else we can do with these 8 worldly concerns, which is a very self-centered mind that is just thinking about this life. What we can do is we can meditate on impermanence and death. Impermanence, this life is not going to last forever. One day this life is finished. The more the impermanence of, the less we are worried about the 8 worldly concerns, the less the mind is occupied by the 8 worldly concerns. Okay. Can do is we can, we have a self-centered mind, we can develop bodhicitta, we can develop concern for others, we can develop the wish to help others, we can develop the mind that is feels loving kindness for others, that wishes others to be happy, that wishes others to be free of suffering. That makes us less self-centered and then also less concerned about pleasure and displeasure in this moment. All right. Then I see that the time is running so fast. Let me have a look at the questions. When we attach, I have a little bit trouble getting to the questions. When we attach or avert feelings, are we creating more karmic seeds that are similar to the ones that are ripening in that moment? Both attachment and aversion are delusions. And so, although not every attachment creates the causes for suffering, they all create the causes for samsara. And so therefore, they are in the nature of suffering. So when we react with both attachment and aversion, attachment appears as what is going to give us more pleasure, and aversion appears as what is going to give us less suffering. But they both bring us the opposite of how they appear. So attachment appears as giving more pleasure, but it actually brings us less pleasure. And aversion appears as bringing freedom from suffering, but it actually brings more suffering. So when we experience pleasure, that is the result of good karma, that is the result of virtuous karma. When we react with attachment, we are not creating virtuous karma, we're creating the causes for suffering. By acknowledging the omnipresence of a consciousness, do I also risk acknowledging the extreme of existence? No. Consciousness is always there. That is not the extreme of existence. The extreme of existence is that we hold that consciousness to be inherently existent. If we hold that consciousness to be truly existent, so holding on to a nature which is not there, and by holding on to that nature, we make whatever exists more permanent than it exists in actuality. That is the extreme of existence. But saying something exists always, that's just a reality. That's totally fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Richtig. When an unpleasant feeling arises, I remind myself that this is a habitual feeling I have and I try to let it go. Is this the right approach? I don't think we have habitual feelings. You know, feelings are the ripening of karma. Feelings can also come due to our way of thinking about what we experience or what we are doing. So feelings can be generated by our own inner talking, and if we have an inner critique, you know, that might come with negative feelings, but we create them with the inner critique. And I would say the inner critique is the habit, and then the feeling is generated again and again due to that negative habit. So we cannot eliminate feelings. I cannot say, oh, it's just a habit, I'm going to eliminate it. It's like it is there and it feels unpleasant, and I can observe what is creating that feeling. Where is it coming from? There are certain conditions that trigger certain feelings, right? Yes, it is a ripening of previous karma, but something that I'm doing now is also nurturing that. It is also watering that karma, that seed. So I can look at that and see if I can find the habit that I have in that and change that habit. All right. If I'm not clear, please ask again. How do I going to do this? In 5 minutes, going through the last 5 links. Craving and grasping. Craving is the attachment, right? And so I already spoke about attachment in relation to the pleasant feelings. But when we want to know about craving and grasping, I would say read Lama Zopa's book, The Door to Satisfaction. He beautifully explains there the 8 worldly dharmas and the suffering that arises due to our craving mind, due to the mind of desires attachment, due to following pleasant feelings. And he describes how desire is, you know, that the more we follow desire, desire says, I want more. I'm not satisfied. And the more we follow desire, the more we experience dissatisfaction, the more we experience it tells us, I'm going to make you more happy. I'm gonna give you what you want. But the more we follow it, the less we get what we want. The more we feel empty inside. The more we feel like what we are doing is not really meaningful. When we follow desire, we believe that a certain object is going to make us happy. When I have that object, I will be more happy. Right? But happiness is not coming from the object. Happiness is a result of virtuous actions. And then when we have created a lot of virtuous actions in contact with certain object, we might experience a happy feeling. But then craving for more because we believe the feeling is coming from the object, is coming from having contact with the object. That makes that actually the happy feeling becomes less full. It becomes that even if we would indulge more, we're never going to get the satisfaction that we would like to have. So we think about the nature of desire, that is in the nature of suffering, about the disadvantages of following attachment. We think about the advantages of practicing contentment, of thinking, you know, an antidote to attachment is, for instance, thinking about. Am I back now? Okay. All right.
Seems like it.
That seems like it. You tell me when I'm fading out. So we contemplate the disadvantages of following attachment or following aversion, and we contemplate the advantages of practicing the opposite. And for attachment, that is practicing contentment, thinking about the impermanent nature of the object, of ourselves, of the experience. And with aversion, it is developing loving kindness and developing patience. Right? But you can find that in, I mean, that book for me, that is, I can read that again and again. There is so much juice in that book. The grasping, which is the next link, is a stronger form of attachment. And when I read about it, I have the feeling that actually the grasping had a lot to do with having certain beliefs. Belief in, I want to hold on to, I want to hold on to this. I believe in this. This is mine. I want it to be like that, not being able to let go and be in the present moment, be with whatever is presenting itself. Having other ideas about how reality should be and holding on to that. This is what makes us unhappy. This is grasping. And so we can hold on to beliefs, we can hold on to doctrines, we can hold on to certain disciplines, we can hold on to certain conducts, we can hold on to the self. We can hold on to, I want the pleasures of the six senses. I want to be free of the displeasures of the six senses. Strongly, I believe it should be like that. That's the grasping mind. So challenging your beliefs and say, is that really true? Is that really true that I need to have that in order to be happy? Is that really true that things exist like that? What if I look from another position? What if I look through the eyes of somebody else? Is it still really true the way I see it? So when we feel this really like that, challenge yourself. Really? Is it really like that? And so with grasping, we come at the end of our life. And so what we would like to do, is that we want to die without any regrets, that we would like to die with a virtuous mind. So generating bodhicitta at the end of life, is fantastic. And in order to be able to do that while you are suffering, practice Tonglen during your life, taking on the suffering in order to benefit sentient beings. So then when the suffering at the end of your life occurs, you have such a habit of using that suffering to generate bodhicitta that you practice it automatically. Think about where you are going and that you like to come back to be of benefit to sentient beings. And be willing to let go. Let go of this life. Let go of your family, your friends, your possessions, your body. Let go. And trust that if you have used your life to the best of your ability, you can die without any regret. You did your very best. That's good enough. That will do the job. And then, the karma ripens for the next rebirth, and we are born, which is the first moment of our next life. And then aging and death already starts. And so then when that life is there, we can just look into our own life and say, okay, how do I going to use this? And then we use whatever we can to practice Dharma. Every moment that we can, we use to practice Dharma. We change our motivation from being concerned with this life to thinking about future lifetimes. Instead of being concerned with ourselves, we are concerned for others. We practice the 6 perfections. We develop wisdom and compassion. We study as much as we can. We meditate as much as we can. We are good human beings as much as we can. And with all these actions, we create new imprints, or we lay new seeds in our consciousness to improve our life more and more and more. Right? This is what we try to do, create better lives, better lives, better lives. And every life that is better will give us more conditions for practicing the Dharma, better conditions for practicing the Dharma. And so we habituate our mind to practicing the Dharma. And eventually that will lead to liberation from samsara and to enlightenment. Right? So I see samsara is like a spiral, you know, that is tightening us up more and more and more and more. Delusions getting bigger, 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 bigger if we do nothing. And then when we start practicing Dharma, we start to undo that, undo that, undo that. But we need to go a long way, you know, to really get to that point where we realize that that self that is constantly trying to create the causes for happiness, or that is constantly trying to be happy, that self does not exist the way we believe it does. And once we realize that, when we can really see that directly, then we cut the root of samsara. Then we are on the way to liberation from samsara. All right. So let's do a few questions. And then I thought we can, if I have enough time to do the meditation. When let me see, what was it? Yeah, you got the book. Also, Lama Zopa has written another book about the 8 worldly concerns. I think how to practice Dharma or something. Do you remember, Lhundup? It is one of these, I think a few years ago that that book came. Lorna, you want to ask a question?
Yes, I'm wondering if the first 10 stages in the 12 links, is that when we're in the bardo? And then we have birth.
The 10th link, you mean?
Well, all the links that lead up to the 10th link and then end up in birth, life, and death.
No, it's not like that. It's so when we see the 12 links, it looks like they are from one lifetime, but they are not. Let me see if I can put it up. So the bardo, if we talk about the bardo is between becoming and birth. There is the bardo. The ignorance is in this life. You know, we can do an action right now under the influence of ignorance, and that deposits a seed in my mind, right? I can do that right now. So the first 3 I can do right now. Then that seed has a potential for name and form, the 6 sense spheres, contact and feeling. So that seed is sitting in my mind and it's doing nothing. It is dormant. Then at the end of my life, due to craving and grasping, I might activate that seed, right? Then that seed ripens due to craving and grasping, due to my last thought that I have in this life. And then it becomes, it comes to fruition, and it becomes a new existence. And so becoming in general refers to my next existence, but specifically it refers to that moment just before death, the last moment of this life. Okay. Then birth is the first moment of next life. And so it looks like the bardo is not really described, you know, but it's somewhere in between there, the bardo.
I understand. Great. Thank you.
Okay, welcome. Anybody else? I don't see everyone. Was it all clear? Can you do something with the information? Yeah, good. Good. We can talk about all the Dharma just within the 12 links. Okay, if there are no questions, then I can go to the meditation if you want. Is that all right, Lhundup? You see no more questions? All right. So I thought maybe we can do a meditation on the nature of the mind, you know, in how feelings arise and how we react to feelings and how we can be with the feelings without following the reactions that we have. Right, to bring some more awareness there. All right. So for the meditation, we find a posture that we find suitable. But important is that you feel relaxed, that you feel relaxed. And when we are relaxed, the mind is willing to come to the present moment. The mind is willing to come to the body. At the same time, we want to be alert so that we can really observe what is happening in the mind. And so finding that middle between being relaxed and being alert. So that both qualities are present. And so in order to check whether these qualities are present, you can focus on your body. Or you can focus on your breath. When the mind is with the body or with the breath, the mind is always in the present moment. Because the body and the breath are always in the present moment. And so try to have an open mind during the meditation. If we can accept whatever arises in the mind, then there is no aversion in the mind. Think about that. If we can accept whatever arises, there is no aversion in the mind. And if we have no expectations of what might come, there is no desirous attachment in the mind. When the mind is in the present moment, we can see the impermanent nature of things. We can observe the feelings arising in the mind and dissolving back into the mind. We can also observe our mind reacting to the feeling. And if we don't follow this reaction, we can see that a reaction naturally dissolves back into the mind. Feelings and reactions are coming and going. They arise in the mind and dissolve back into the mind. And being mindful gives us the opportunity to see the transit nature of everything. Everything that arises naturally dissolves again. When we are focused on the impermanent nature of things, naturally there is no clinging to pleasant experiences and no aversion to unpleasant experiences, because we realize there is nothing to hold on to. Everything passes away by itself. Feeling arises in every moment of mind. When pleasure arises in the mind, we react with attachment. And this is our attempt to re-experience the pleasant feelings. We think that we need to have attachment in order to experience pleasure. And when we hear that we have to give up desire, we think that we have to give up pleasure. But that's not true. When we give up desire, we experience more and more full the pleasure. When pleasant feelings arise, instead of following it, try to step back and give it some space. And we can do this by being mindful, by being in the present moment. When we practice contentment, we accept what is or what we have. And because there is no desire in the mind of contentment, there is no dissatisfaction. And this is when peace starts. When unpleasant feelings arise, we react with aversion. And this is our attempt not to experience the unpleasant feeling. We deny or ignore or suppress unpleasant feelings. Or we distract ourselves and indulge in pleasant activities. And then we think, oh, I'm just trying to relax. We feel the stress inside. And then we're going to do something that we like in order to relax. But by rejecting the unpleasant feelings, they actually become stronger. By being mindful, we also relax. But the relaxation that comes from being mindful of the unpleasant feelings is very different from the relaxation that comes from distracting ourselves from unpleasant feelings. When we are mindful, we try to look. We look at what arises in the mind. And by looking, we understand the nature of things. We can see the impermanence of things. And so that will help us to let go. We don't get disturbed when we lose something or when things change. And when the mind is undisturbed by loss or by harm, then we have developed the mind of patience. The moment we realize what suffering is, and we can be mindful of the suffering, we can be present with the suffering, peace begins. Peace lays within the knowledge. As soon as we understand, the peace comes. As soon as we understand, oh, I'm afraid, or I'm worried, or even I'm in pain, then we accept it. And when we accept it, at least it doesn't become bigger. We are not fighting it. So being with the present, in the present moment, being with what you are feeling, what you are experiencing, observing how you react, but not following that reaction. allowing the feeling and the reaction to arise and dissolve back into the mind. Will help you to connect with reality. And the more we connect with reality, the less delusions will arise in the mind. The more clear the mind will become. The more peaceful the mind will become. And then you can think what was most useful in this meditation for you. Or maybe there is something that you would like to think more about and come back to at a later point in time. And so by contemplating that, we can bring the meditation to a conclusion. And then we conclude this meditation session. And also the session of today by dedicating all the positive energy that we have created today and also last week by thinking about the 12 links of dependent arising, by trying to understand how cause and effect works, how karma works, by trying to understand how we can apply our Dharma practice in a way that it directly influences the 12 links of dependent arising, in a way that our bondage to samsara becomes less strong, less intense. All that merit that we created, we dedicated to the happiness and the well-being of all sentient beings, including ourselves. And if you have any personal dedications, you can make them for yourself. And then I want to thank you for being here and for having me.